Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. My name is Dave Leese, and today I am thrilled to welcome the author of the favorites, Layne Fargo, to the skating lesson. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you about this book.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give the viewers kind of a little background. I actually heard of this book because my mother works in a library and reads all of the journals and orders the books, and she's not someone that has an interest in figure skating necessarily.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah. So she told me she was reading this book, and in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, there's a book about skating. And then she was getting into it, and you have to read this, and this is happening, and he's getting with her, and this, and I was like, I'm like, all right, I'll download it, right?
Mm.
And then she's like, and there's a blogger going on. And I'm like, oh no. Right. So, and then and we get to the opening and the dedication, and it's dedicated to Tanya Harding, Surya, and Katarina Witt. At this point, I
Mhm.
really didn't know where we were going. I didn't know if we were going to say that, like, the band flip was banned because of Surya. I'm reading that, like, you're an unapologetic feminist. And I'm like, well, Tanya Harding's an interesting choice, debatable. So just
She is debatable, yes.
talk about how you set, this book was set, with these three people. And I thought, okay, like, there's something to this. So talk about your interest in skating.
Yeah, so I've been a skating fan my whole life, and especially an Olympics fan. Like I always say, I don't care about sports at all, except when the Olympics are on, and then I care about all the sports for 2 weeks, and I'm like completely obsessed. Like the Winter Olympics often land at the time of my anniversary with my partner, and he knows like we're not going out, we're watching
Okay.
the Olympics. But so Katarina, Tanya, and Surya are like the reason it's dedicated to them is they're the three skaters that I remembered most from my childhood as examples of, I mean, very different examples, but examples of women who didn't play by the rules and kind of were bold and unapologetic and went their own way. And yeah, Tanya's certainly debatable, will not defend all of her actions, but as a little girl watching her, I really related to her, like her being an outsider, not quite fitting in, trying to like do her thing instead of being like all the other skaters. So yeah, that's why I included them.
Okay, I got like a 2018 vibe from this book, and I don't know exactly like why or what, and we can talk about some of the inspiration for the characters. I know that online there has been a lot of chat that it was, Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer, which is not the case. And you said that you actually based it on Madison Hubble. So I want to talk about your love for Madison Hubble and, where this, all originates.
Yeah, I won't say that Tessa and Scott have like nothing to do with this book. It definitely was in 2018 when they won gold for the second time. The kind of online frenzy around them and their chemistry was part of the spark of this book. Like not so much them as people or skaters, but just the public reaction and how everyone was desperate to know what their deal is off the ice. But yeah, Hubble and Donahue were always my personal favorite skaters. I just love their chemistry and their absolutely wild relationship history. Like, I think it's so incredible and such a testament to their sportsmanship and maturity that they could like date and then break up and still skate together and be with other people. And so I was very much inspired by that. And also just by Madison. I mean, she's such a badass, right? Like, she's so cool. She is another woman who I feel like doesn't fit the exact mold in skating and has just gone her own way and made a name for herself. And obviously, we can talk about her skating with Gabriella and everything, but I admire her so, so much.
Okay, so what was it about Ice Dance that sparked an idea for a novel? Because I'm so interested in, I always imagine, books in my head, but the one thing about skating adaptations is they're often really corny and cheesy, or they go the complete tropes that it's going to be about an eating disorder. And you really avoided these pitfalls that I think a skating book could fall into, which is why I was nervous, going into it and apprehensive because of that. So how did your twisted mind kind of put all of this together?
Well, it was partially though, it's a retelling of Wuthering Heights, and that really helped me kind of focus it because it is like there are those typical tropes that you see. I was really just writing the skating book that I wanted to read, which is still very dramatic, lots of stuff going on behind the scenes, very soapy and fun, but also I tried to really do my research and get all the details right as much as possible. And I've heard from a lot of people in the skating world that I did, which was such a relief because as an author, like no matter how much research you do, if you're writing about a world that you're not a part of, you're like, oh no, what did I miss? What did I get wrong? And if I did get stuff wrong, I want you to tell me. Um, but yeah, I just kind of focused on the relationships between the characters, which again were really inspired by Wuthering Heights. So I had that to go on. And I think ice dance specifically interested me because the skaters tend to be older when they peak, they have longer careers. So you get these skaters who've been together, like Tessa and Scott, for decades. And that's just a fascinating relationship, no matter who's involved. I mean, that intensity of competition and training together and all the interpersonal stuff. I just thought it would be a really rich world to explore.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was going to be like a pair element, with the throwing, because there's an undercurrents of like violent tension in the book that keeps it really interesting. Is that you don't know what's going to
That's kind
happen.
of my thing. I
It's like,
used to write,
yeah, you're
yeah,
on the edge the whole time, not
yeah.
knowing where this is going to go. Yeah.
My first two books are psychological thrillers, and this one's a little more like no one really knows what it is. It's like women's fiction, book club fiction, whatever you want to call it. But I still wanted to have that sense of danger and drama, and yeah, keep everyone very tense the whole time. I keep having people be like, "I'm sending you my therapy bill."
Okay. So why Wuthering Heights? For people that didn't, take AP English language or literature and explore this book, like what to you, made you ruminate on Wuthering Heights and then think this should be figure skating?
I was working on two different books at the time. One was like a gothic romance that had very Wuthering Heights vibes. And then I was working on more of a straightforward thriller about rival ice dance teams that just like it wasn't working. It wasn't hitting what I wanted it to. And then I reread Wuthering Heights for inspiration for the gothic one. And that was when I had the idea to sort of mash them up into what eventually became the favorites. And it was a couple things. It was the intensity of the emotions in Wuthering Heights. I mean, they're basically like a force of nature. Kathy and Heathcliff, their like obsession with each other over the years. And then the like childhood sweethearts growing up and how their relationship changes, I thought could fit really well with Ice Dance. The class differences in that book are such a big driver of the plot and the conflict. And there's also like partner swapping in that, where it's like Kathy and Heathcliff are together, and then she marries Edgar Linton, and Heathcliff marries his sister. And so I thought that could be kind of fun because that is something that happens a lot in ice dance, people breaking up and pairing up in different ways.
Okay. Did you have like a eureka moment while rereading Wuthering Heights and be like, this is skating, or did it come to
It,
you?
um, kind of, but so this was like December 2021, really deep in the pandemic, and I kind of thought I'd lost my mind. Like I thought it was a little unhinged. It's been interesting now, with the book out, and I've had people who are like big ice dance fans or even were ice dancers themselves be like, "Oh, when I heard about this, I just knew it would work because of like this, and this." And I'm like, "Oh, great," because I did not know it would work. I was I remember having a FaceTime call with my critique partner and being like, is this anything? Like, I feel like I've lost it. I really tried to talk myself out of writing it for a while. It just seemed really unhinged. But yeah, it ended up working a lot better than I would have thought at the beginning. I think I was just, I mean, you remember what that time was like. We were all just sort of out of our minds, and it was hard to see it. Like, I'm like, is this my intuition telling me something, or have I just like completely lost it?
Yeah. That time is so interesting for so many transformative, in our lives for so many ways, and I think about that with myself too. Uh, what is, the Wuthering Heights aspect of this really satisfied like a nerdy slash analytical curiosity, because to me it was the first novel that I remember in English class where we really analyzed the text and themes that
Mm.
delved in like deeper on a level. And I had this force of nature English teacher who didn't really foreshadow that this was going to be some revolutionary book and change how we
Mm.
approached, studying. So it was so interesting to go back and revisit it. I think we had, read A Thousand Acres, which is, a retelling of King Lear, obviously, that was so interesting. So you're creating an ice dance world, and I'm curious. I know that you were really specific about songs and you know the details of the competitions and the dates and the locations. It all matches up. What I'm curious is you also got to recreate like a fantasy skating world, if you will, with these programs. So
Hmm.
did you have a fantasy program that stuck out? Because there's a vampire program in the book, and it almost reminded me of like the theatricality of Moulin Rouge, but like a much darker tale. So I was
Yeah.
wondering if you could tell me about like what it was like to create these free dances and the world you were trying to create.
The vampire one was like very just self-indulgent because I love vampire stuff. My next book is about a Broadway musical that's like a vampire musical. So I just keep coming back to this, I guess. And then I found Klimova and Ponomarenko did that like exhibition program to the same music in the 90s. I didn't know that when I picked it for the book. And I was like, oh, there we go. I was always thinking about the characters and where they were emotionally because I wanted the book covers a wide span of time, like over a decade. And so we're not seeing everything, we're not seeing all the competitions. And so the stuff where we're actually seeing it in scene and experiencing it, I really wanted it to like play with play off of how they're relating to each other in the moment in some way. So it's either kind of matching up with what's going on in their relationship and giving them this means to express it, or it's totally opposite. Like they are so pissed at each other, but they have to act like they're passionately in love on the ice and to kind of like up that tension of them having to act totally opposite to how they're feeling. So that was the driving force. And then I just tried to pick music that like had an emotional charge for me, especially stuff I listened to in like high school and college. There's like Madonna in there, you know. And the costumes are pretty much all like I have all these notes and pictures saved, and I would take like this design from this costume, like the sleeves, and then the skirt from this one, and sort of mash it all up. But they all come from real costumes.
How did you know that you were creating something like valuable and not just going into like your inner fantasy of madness, and
I,
yeah.
I didn't.
Okay.
I spent the whole time because this was an interesting book. Like I have, other books out, and typically when you're a published author, you try to sell your next book on proposal to your publisher, like without writing all of it. And I'd actually left my previous publisher. We had some differences of opinion. In fact, part of the reason I left is I had pitched them not the favorites, but like the earlier book about ice dance. And they were like, that seems really niche. I don't think people are going to want to read about ice dance. So write something else. Um, so when I was writing this, it was that like writer artist cliche of like, this one's for me. I'm not going to listen to anyone else. Like I didn't really tell my agent what I was doing. I just kind of went into my little obsessed fan bubble. And I think that they could have been a huge mistake, but it kind of worked out. It like let me have fun with it and just follow these like research rabbit holes and stuff and not worry too much about what other people would think until the book was done.
How long did it take you from beginning to end?
This version, like the Wuthering Heights version, like a year and a half.
Okay. Yeah. So were you watching like skating while you're writing this for inspiration? Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like I was writing this during the 2022 Olympics. And then I mean obviously watching all sorts of stuff on YouTube, like old programs. And then the big turning point in this process was I went to see Stars on Ice after the Olympics when it came to Chicago. And that was my first time seeing skating live, believe it or not. Like I just always watched it on TV, and I'd never seen it live. And it was so like, especially watching Jason Brown. I mean, he's just he's just
So
like,
not the vibe of Wuthering Heights, which
I
is
know, but he's
so
such a ray
incredible.
of light. So like I just was watching him just be so like joyful and effervescent and everything. And I turned to my partner at intermission and I was like, it has to have a happy ending. It has to be uplifting. There has to be like love and hope in this. And because I was originally going to do a little bit more of a traditional Wuthering Heights tragic, like depressing ending. And also during the pandemic, it was like I just couldn't write about depressing things anymore. That was part of the reason I moved away from thrillers. But I was also like, as a writer, like writing books is really hard. It's really stressful, but I love it. And that's why I do it. And I think it's the same for a skater. Like you're not going to go through all of that, like mental strain and physical pain and all of this stuff unless you really, really love it. So that changed the direction of the book for me, where I was focused more on like the love of skating. But there's still a lot of mess and drama, of course, but it changed it. So I have Jason to thank for that.
All right, so let's go into the spoiler section. So a disclaimer for everyone that we're gonna like discuss things. You talk about not having a happy ending. Maybe Jason, save this. I was expecting Heath to die because Heathcliff dies. So I was wondering if he was going to die on the ice, like what was going to happen. And we come close, but you gave it a more positive, optimistic ending. Yeah.
Yeah, that was originally he did die. Like that was the original ending. Like kind of the same setup where he's like coughing up blood and everything at the
Yeah.
Olympics. But then he died. And I also was like, I've put these poor people through so much. I really want them to have at least somewhat like their version of a happy ending. I just couldn't make it so depressing. And I think the ending's been kind of controversial, but not because of that, more because of the like romantic entanglements, I'll say.
I didn't find that okay. I have thoughts. I'm during the book, you point out that Kat, people accuse her of being selfish, like quite often. I got more of a single-mindedness that's maybe like being used to people that are really successful, whether in their pursuits, but all of the other people in this world are also single-minded. So I was curious if I missed something or why they felt that she was particularly selfish. Yeah.
I think people just like to call women selfish when they want things and are honest about it. Like that's what I
Okay.
found in my life and in my other books. And I'm like, yeah, she's selfish. I think more people should be selfish and following their dreams and goals and everything. But yeah, everybody in the book is very driven towards something. I think
I didn't
that's what
get
makes
more
them interesting
selfish. I
characters.
got more like unapologetically driven, right?
Yeah.
If anyone
Yeah.
was selfish, I thought it was Bella. So I was really curious about this. And then I thought, why does Kat keep going back and trusting her all of this time? Because I would have a real problem with her. And
Oh, I love Bella. I gotta stand up for Bella. I feel like I'm like Bella's defense attorney at this point because people.
no, Bella is the villain of the book. She's the real villain. And I don't understand why Kat, who's so smart and badass, like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Like, what's happening
I
here?
I think they understand each other on this level that like Kat really like even some of the horrible things that Bella does do, Kat just like gets it and can kind of like see a world where she would do the same thing and sort of respects it. I don't know. They just connect on this different level. I think they're kind of platonic soulmates. I
What?
don't know what to tell you.
No, how? I am not soulmates with someone. No, this is like a bad twin flames argument. Like,
Okay.
he messes with her at the Olympics. Like, no, like we're done. Like we're
Mhm. What I always say about that, because people get really, really upset about like Heath and Bella getting together, is like them skating together in the middle of the book. Like that to Kat is the biggest betrayal. So she forgives that. And then when they sleep together, it's not that big a deal in comparison. I mean, she gets like mad in the moment, but as far as like a deep personal betrayal, that doesn't hit her as
Oh,
hard because
I
she
think
cares
the
more about the skating.
betrayal when she tries to like when they unleash a secret on Kat right before she's about to skate and claim the gold to mess with her psychologically, that I can't forgive. Like,
See, I will defend Bella there because I actually think she knows someone's gonna tell Kat. Like everyone's talking about it in the whole arena. And so she's like, I need to be the one to tell her. She'd rather hear it from me, like as her friend. But then it is sort of it's complicated, right? Like there's a lot of moments like that where it's like she could be purposely sabotaging her. Like I, as the writer, don't really see it that way. I think she is like trying to do what she thinks is the right thing in the moment, but she's been raised by Sheila Lynn, so her kind of like initial instinct is to sabotage and be manipulative, and it's complicated for Bella too. She's trying to learn to be better.
why did you keep the Lins away from being their main rival? So you were writing a book about rival ice dance teams, and I think there could be a temptation to have them be like 1-2, going back and forth, but you kind of avoided that. So I was curious about that choice. I thought it was interesting.
That almost came out of Garrett as a character. I just like that just wasn't him. Like
Okay.
he needed to get out of there. Like the more I got to know him as a character, I was just like, he's not happy in this world. He's not the one who's going to be so driven. Like I actually do think he was holding Bella back a little bit if she'd had a partner who was just as ruthless and tenacious as she was. Even though he's a very good skater, he didn't have that fire to win. Like he just wants to live his life and be happy. We love Garrett.
Were you thinking of actresses during this book who you would want to play these people? Like what kind of an actress would play Kat in your mind?
I was thinking, I mean, she's like too old at this point, but when I was writing the book, I was picturing like Anne Hathaway because I think she has that thing where she is just, I mean, people hate her for it, like that she's so intense and like wants things and cares a lot. And people find that unlikable. Like I don't, but yeah, I was thinking about her. And then for Heath, I was thinking about like a younger Riz Ahmed, who I
Okay.
really love.
It was so interesting to me, and I messaged you about this. So I've listened to the Step by Step podcast because I've always been fascinated by the blonde character Dana, right? Who's Stacey Keenan, right? I remember her being really sarcastic, and I saw that they were going to have a podcast, so I gave it a listen. And Christine Lakin was there, and I couldn't put the
The voice.
better. And it was such a like it was blowing my mind when I found out that it was her, but it was just so interesting. So did you have were you involved in the creating of the audiobook? I know that you wanted Johnny Weir and you mentioned that. So how does that all come? Because oftentimes it's one author, but it made so much more sense that there were several, voice actors.
Yeah, they had decided to do the full cast, which I was hoping, like as I was writing the book, I was like, I don't know how you would do this without a bunch of actors, the documentary portions and everything. So they sent me a couple people for each character with samples of their previous work, and I like ranked them, and I did get my first choice in almost all cases. And then Johnny Weir, it was like obviously Ellis is somewhat based on Johnny Weir, not a secret. And so when the producer emailed me, I was like, it's my delusional author dream that Johnny Weir plays this character. And I was kind of joking, honestly, because I was just like, there's absolutely no way he would be interested in this. I'm just kind of putting this out there as like, maybe we can find someone who sounds like him or has that vibe. And the producer just decided to shoot her shot and send him an offer and see. And again, I was like, there's absolutely no way. It's cool that he has heard of my book. Like, that's amazing. I'm just going to enjoy that. And then he said yes and did it. And he's so funny. I'm still listening to the audiobook now, actually. I'm not a big audiobook person, weirdly, but I had to check this one out because like all the performances are so great and he's cracking me up. I'm kind of like horrified by some of the things I made him say though. So sorry, Johnny.
If there would be a TV version of this, would you want Johnny Weir to play that role?
I would not be mad about it.
Okay. So I guess as we move in, talk a little bit more about Bella, like as an actress, a character, her motivations. Like I need to get into this a little bit more, and the mother. Like so, I
Yeah.
found Sheila a really fascinating character and who she was potentially based on.
I was thinking about Ming-Na Wen when I was writing her, who's like such a badass kind of, she's like very petite but terrifying. Like that's sort of the vibe I was thinking for Sheila. Um, yeah, Sheila is like of all the characters, she's the one who's the most like truly ruthless and manipulative. Like she is in it for herself and for her children, which is like ultimately for herself. And she will really stop at nothing. Like she's kind of always pulling the strings. And then it's like Bella and Garrett have reacted in very different ways to being raised by this woman. Like Garrett just is not that person. Like I think he would almost like to be like he would like to be like that harder shell and be able to just like go for what he wants, but he just doesn't have that. He's just a nice person somehow. And Bella, yeah, I really wanted to write a friendship between these two women. And I mean, I guess we can debate about whether they're true friends to each other. I think they are, despite everything. But a friendship between these two women where they're very competitive and they are honest about that. Like, it's not a secret to Kat that Bella wants to like take her out, but they can like talk about it openly. And I base their relationship a lot on, and I hope they won't be offended by this because I don't think they're like getting into all the soapy antics of Kat and Bella, but I based their friendship a lot on Madison Hubble and Gabriella Papadakis. I remember watching, I mean, tons of interviews with them, but also in the On Edge documentary series where they're just basically saying like, I remember Madison talking about she's always wanted to beat Gabriella, like they never beat them. And she's like, she's my friend. I love her, but like, I want to beat her. And that was the vibe I wanted to get across. Cause that's how it is in the writing world too. It's like you're friends with your rivals, you are jealous of each other, you want the thing that your friend got, you want that big book deal, you want the spot on the bestseller list, you want this certain opportunity. And the only way you can maintain those friendships, I think, is just to be honest about your jealousy and competitiveness and like let it coexist with your love and respect of this other person.
Interesting. Do you think our current skating world is it missing some of the camp and drama of these characters that you're talking about from this, this time of Hubble and Tessa and Scott and the Shibutanis and the characters were so rich, and it feels like maybe we're missing a little bit of that right now. I think it's so key to skating in our interest.
Yeah, I'd like to, I mean, I'd always like to see a little more drama. I mean, it's hard though, because it's like, I think that's another reason I like Ice Dance better as a viewer and like as something to focus a book on, because they're adults. It was like so, some of the drama that's been going on in the past few seasons, I mean, certainly at the 2022 games and everything, it's like they're children, and that's not fun to watch these like girls cry by the ice. Like, that was just heart-wrenching to watch all the Russian girls at the last Olympics. So yeah, as long as everyone's consenting adults, I'm all for the drama in camp.
Yeah, I think you were relatively easy on the Russians. You didn't go too as hard as you could have. So I thought that that was interesting as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I have like one nice-ish Russian character, and then the Russian coach, I mean, obviously Atari was the inspiration, and then I watched a lot of skating documentaries as I was writing this, and all the Russian coaches always had like the best sound bites where they just say the most devastating things in like a deadpan way. And so I wanted that in the documentary. Like Veronica is so funny and mean.
Well, yeah, the choice of a documentary. Can you talk about that as a narrative choice? And I thought about the character of Alice as well. I thought that that was obviously really key to how the book is narrated. So, yeah, can you talk about the inspiration for both of that?
Yeah, I again, it kind of goes back to Wuthering Heights. Like that book is not told by Kathy and Heathcliff, it's told by Nellie Dean and Mr. Lockwood, and like so you're seeing them from the outside. And Ellis is my Nellie Dean character, who I'm always like, people read Wuthering Heights and they're like, Nellie Dean is an unbiased narrator. She's telling us the truth. And I'm like, Nellie Dean is a messy bitch who loves drama, who hates Kathy, who's like talking shit about her. Like that's what I think. So that's where that came from. And then I just love all these kind of scandalous, sensationalized sports documentaries. Like I'm sure you saw that one, Meddling on
Or
Peacock. On Peacock. No, it was about the 2002 scoring scandal, and the way they did that like interpretive dance about the like abusive relationship. Yeah, that stuff, it's such a fun art form, and like kind of trashy and tabloid and like all of that stuff. And I wanted to bring that into the book. So, A, it kind of gave you a sense of the bigger world. It wasn't just Kat's point of view. B, it really allowed me to explain things about skating and ice dance to readers who might not be familiar with it in like hopefully a fun and voicey way, as opposed to just dumping all this information like it's a Wikipedia page. Because there is a lot of stuff that it's like I have to explain what a twizzle is and like all of this so that people understand the book. But the documentary was like a very easy way to do that, because like that's what you do in a documentary. You'd explain some of these terms.
what is it like for the book to have success first, almost outside of skating, before people in skating actually discovered it? I think that that's, interesting that it really went, more mass before the skating community really learned of it. So what has that
Yeah.
been? Yeah.
I think, I mean, my publisher was trying to cast a wide net, and kind of get the readers who like, Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, like Daisy Jones and the Six and Carrie Soto is Back and all of that. I'm really glad that skating people are discovering it now, and for the most part liking it. I've gotten like some not so nice comments, as you always do. But it it almost like means more to me when someone in the skating world loves it, because that's who, like, I'm such a fan. I was writing it with that audience in mind in some ways, but unfortunately, like, if only skating fans bought the book, I wouldn't sell very many copies. I mean, I think this is like a long con to make more people interested in skating and in ice dance specifically, because I've heard from so many people who are like, oh, I'm a skating fan, but I always skip the ice dance. Maybe I'll watch it now. And I'm like, yes, thank you. You should.
Yeah. Well, you talked about getting to know your characters and so, much about them. So after the book ends, right, they're kind of living, coaching together somewhat harmoniously. What do you think they're like now and as coaches? Like what is happening in their lives?
I hope Kat and Heath are going to therapy. They just need to go to therapy. They need to go to therapy separately and as a couple. Like, that's what I hope for them. But I think, like, the way I describe it in the epilogue is that, like, they have this skating school together, and Kat has sort of taken a back seat because she is such a controversial figure, so she doesn't go to the competitions and everything. But I'd like to think that eventually she would be like, screw it, I'm gonna show my face again and like get out there and be with Bella at competitions. And I think Heath is just like, he is really into being a dad and hanging out with his daughter and going skating with her. And I wanted to, like, I'm someone, I don't have kids, I don't want kids. So I really wanted to write Kat as a character who's like, sure, she doesn't want to be a mother, but and write like the male love interest as the character who does want to be a parent, and that's really important to him, because that's not something I see a ton in media. So
Well, what's Kat doing with all of her ambition now? Like where is she putting that energy and that
that's a great question. I do think that eventually that would just get to her. I mean, I think to Kat, she did achieve what she wanted to. Like anyone who saw them skate at the Olympics knows that they won, really. Like, so in her mind, she's like, I am the gold medalist. I achieved my dream. I don't need other people to tell me that. Like, I know the truth. So I think that satisfies her for a while. I don't know if it would always. I really want to write, I don't know if I ever will, but I would love to write a sequel about Bella and Heath's daughter. I think that would be fun.
is that like a Kathy Catherine situation happening?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, what I really want to do is write a book about like female ice dance team, which I'm like hoping is going to be like a real thing very soon, if Maddie and Gabby have anything to say about it.
Yeah, why a female ice dance team and talk about this. It's certainly been I think it's such an interesting time just in the country and in the world. So their pairing gets so many reactions.
Mhm.
I like about it is they're both very artistic, and you can see that they have a unique chemistry with each other that it's not quite romantic, it's not quite sexual, but it's sensual, or it's about their
Yeah.
inter dynamic. Like it kind of has tones of a lot of things, a lot of shades in there. Yeah.
It does, yeah. I just think like the reason to have same-sex pairings is that there's just so many more women who want to skate. Like, that's just a fact. So we have synchro, which is great and should be an Olympic sport in my opinion. Um, but I don't want to get too like, about all this. Like, there's so much bad behavior from the men in ice dance sometimes, and in pairs too. But it's like any world like that where there's very few men and they're in high demand and people are like having to bend over backwards to like get a partner and all of that stuff, like it opens the door for all sorts of abuses of power. And I think having teams with two women, or like allowing that to be the case, it would mean that the men would have to bring more to the table than just being a man who can skate. That's my
I'm curious,
opinion.
as an author, someone who's studying, exploring relationships and dynamics, they have a very unique dynamic together. I mean, off the ice, obviously they're good friends, but on the ice, they have something with each other that they don't have with their other partners, and they have great chemistry with their other partners, but it's something
Yeah.
different, when they skate together that I find really intriguing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a softness to it. It's really beautiful. Like, I was watching all these clips from their performance last weekend at Art on Ice, and it's like this like tenderness, and but it's very sexy, but it's not fully sexual. You're right. It does feel sapphic to me, like as a queer woman. I mean, and Gabby obviously is queer too. So I love it. I want to see more.
I find they have like this like intellectual, emotional, intelligent like depth that they're like in some of their
Yeah.
movements that it maybe is not there in the other. That's an interesting case. So
I mean, you can see like how much they really respect each other as equals and artists and athletes and all that. It really comes across.
ah. So what is your hope for an ideal like a good Olympics to inspire you? Like what do you need? Like do we need some good drama to happen? Like, it always has something. So
I mean, I like the drama. I'm still like that clip of Hubble and Donahue almost running into the Russians last time and Zach. Like, I like that kind of drama. I don't like the kind of drama where it's like someone's dream is really being crushed. So I'm hoping everyone just has a good experience, but like a little bit of that kind of drama can be fun. Add a little spice to it. Mhm.
think we miss Hubble and Donahue, like still, like, even when they got their gold medals, like seeing them interact, it was just fascinating, right? There's just
Mhm.
something about their dynamic with each other that keeps us all guessing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we,
They like every time I've had so many people be like, oh, this book, it's like Tessa and Scott fan fiction, right? And then they get like a full ass TED talk on Hubble and Donahue from me. I'm like, I need like charts to explain the relationship history and like when they were both dating different members of the Spanish team and like all of that stuff. It just, I don't know. It's like the drama, but also the respect and maturity to be able to keep skating together and kind of it is like their family at this point. Like I think Zach even has said that in interviews that it's like beyond being exes or colleagues or like they're just part of each other's lives forever. And I think that's really beautiful.
yeah, I thought of you because I was listening to, there's an interview with Scott Moyer that came out last week, and he was talking about how there were years, he said, where he and Tessa couldn't stand each other, but then were skating each other on the ice. Like they couldn't stand each other like personally, but obviously professionally worked together well. Um, yeah, and there was also a point in Hubble and Donahue's partnership when he had originally dated and skated with Piper Gillis, and then they broke up. But just the way that they were both in new partnerships, they always would skate back to back at competitions, which just kind of added to the intrigue and the mystique of it all. So
Hmm. I've always wondered what Zach and Piper's dynamic would have been like because they are just both such strong personalities. I mean, Maddie is too, but I feel like she has this like calmness almost that maybe I don't know. She's a Pisces, right? So she's like bringing that energy. But yeah, Piper and Zach, that must have been wild.
yeah, I think the only thing I ever heard is like, they couldn't continue skating together. Like it had to end. Where obviously this relationship with Hubble is so much more fascinating.
Yeah.
Why she
Well,
made
the quote that lives rent free in my mind is when Zach said they had to stop being romantically involved in order to keep skating together because their relationship was too explosive. I'm like, say more.
Oh, I mean, this is why, she was such a great protagonist in your book. So I thank you so much for writing this. This is so fascinating. And yeah, thank you for intriguing us all. This was definitely so much fun. And I left the book wanting more. And I think that that's always, the measure of a good book.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for featuring the book and having me on.